How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Yeah. This is our last one of these for the year.
Yeah.
It's our last one for the year. And so I thought today we would kind of do a recap of some of the things that we've learned this year, some of the lessons that we're taking away, and maybe talk a little bit about what we want to do next year or what we're hoping for next year. I know that's Rebecca's favorite question. But I want to start by just asking a question, because we've been kind of talking about this for the last week or so. Like, what are some of the biggest takeaways from this year? What are some of the biggest things that you've learned? And I want to kind of start with just in terms of your own sort of health and fitness. What are some of the biggest things that you have learned or discovered about yourself over these last 12 months? Rebecca, I'll start with you.
Oh, man. All right. Well, God, back in January of 2022, it feels like 1,000 years ago, I started the year injured with my elbow. So
That's right.
think, I know, it feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah.
So just from then versus now, I'm just as strong. I'm more resilient. I'm smarter. I know when to stop doing something before I get injured. And in fact, I had a similar conversation with one of my clients right before this who was trying to push through some pain. And I can have that conversation of like, it's not worth it. And by the way, you're not going to get weaker because of it. So I think that's the biggest takeaway is that, you're not going to go in reverse if you have to, take a step back due to injury or illness or vacation or life or whatever.
Yeah. I forgot you started the year injured. And it was more like, it wasn't like a terrible injury, but I think you felt really terrible about it.
Well, I couldn't do the things that I identified as a lifter and I couldn't lift.
Yeah.
So, it kind of shook my identity as an athlete, which is a hard pill to swallow. It's like you are the lifter in the gym and you do lifting things and now you can't lift. It's like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's a few other things I can think of.
All I do is lift. That's it.
But I mean, yeah, there's a few other things I can think of. Maybe you won't take them as learnings, but maybe like the things that you're proud of. I mean, like, because you weren't lifting as much, you focused a little more on just general conditioning. You started working on gymnastics. Like, you got some bar muscle ups there at the end.
Yeah. Well, let's not pretend that was due to the injury. But yes, you're right. I was able to have a more holistic approach. I actually stopped lifting as a focus for a good 3 to 4 months and just did CrossFit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I didn't love it, but if anything, it taught me how much I enjoy lifting as a sport. And I actually really enjoyed doing classes.
Yeah.
And so one thing I didn't prioritize as much before was joining class. Whereas now I'm, a little disappointed if I can't, go to my class days and like hang out with the, so I think letting go of like fitness has to look like this. I have to do these Metcons and this conditioning. And actually I couldn't just join a class and have fun, with Gloria and Philip and stuff. So I think I think now that I reflect back at 2022, joining the 9:30 class is probably my the best thing I did at the gym.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as an athlete.
Nice.
No, that's good. Because thinking through it, like you were working out, you were doing lifting, for an hour and a half a day, 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Kind of on your own, either in your garage or in the corner of the gym. And it's funny because like some of your lifts, like you haven't gotten weaker.
Yeah. And I don't lift as often.
Yeah.
So I, had to kind of learn that lesson through injury. I had to explore, I even did a CrossFit competition, I guess. There was that, and that felt like a while ago. Yeah.
This is like a yearly review for Rebecca.
I know.
All right.
Okay. What else, guys?
Yeah. Okay. Wendy, what was your biggest like lesson, biggest sort of fitness, nutrition related learning this year?
Yeah, I think the big one for me is trusting the process.
Yeah.
Like just, giving birth last year. No, a year ago. Yes, a year ago. And then it's just,
When's your son's birthday?
somewhere in last year. But yeah, so because after having Weston, I wasn't sure how it was going to look like and how I was going to feel and all that stuff. So I remember that at the beginning of the year, that's when I started actually moving a little bit more. It took me like a good 3 months for me to even touch a barbell. And at some point, like during those 3 months, I felt a little frustrated, a little sad because I would come in and I would see everyone, just do all the things that I love to do. And I wasn't able to do it at that point. So, but I kept telling myself like, hey, you don't want to make it worse. So just, take your time. And as soon as I did the 3 months and then afterwards I slowly started to get back into things. I became a better athlete than I have been like ever in my life. Like I've PR'd so many lifts. There's a few things that I'm still trying to figure out, but just in general, I have found out that I've been kind of slacking a little bit in terms of like an athlete myself.
Before all of this year, you weren't taking it seriously?
I don't think so. So I feel like I learned a lot about myself, my strength and my weaknesses, like doing the recovery of childbirth and just basically trusting the process. And there are going to be some times where as an athlete, you want to have that, you want to be the best, you want to be there. And it can be tempting to just say, screw it, I'm just going to do it, whatever. I think I'm good. But in reality, it's like, no, you should probably just stick with the plan. So I think that's the biggest lesson for me is trusting the process. And I'm a fucking stronger than what I think I am. And it took childbirth for me to figure that out, to find out. So yeah, I think that's the biggest. I mean, I even did some CrossFit competition. I did 2 actually, and the one we did together, we even placed. Like I had no expectations for us to place at all.
That's because of you.
Yeah. So it's just so many things that I just kept finding out about myself, and yeah, that was super cool for me too. So this year was great for me. It was a really good year for me. So I'm really excited for this coming up year.
Yeah. Just, I do want to highlight this. We placed 3rd place because of you. The very first workout, you were like, oh, I think I want to do scaled.
Yeah.
And it was like 100-pound,
like a
sandbag or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, let's just try it, see how it goes. And you were able to do 1 or 2. It's like, that's fine, just do it.
Yeah. I remember you said that. I was like, this is one that I can do. And I struggled. But I did it.
And you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. You managed to do it. And if you hadn't have done that, then we would have been scaled.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have placed at all. And turns out like everything else was easy after that.
Yeah, that was the hardest part. Yeah. So
yeah, that's amazing.
It was a lot of fun this year. Like, getting back into routine and working out with you guys again and just, kind of just getting back into the things that I love to do. It took me some time, but it was super worth it because it paid off for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell my clients, right? Like, trust the process. It's slow, but trust it. It will pay off. And I had to go through myself. Yeah. So
can I ask you just like a couple more details? Because you give a big, like a general overview.
Yeah.
But like we've talked about it, like you did a lot of like, you put a lot of like things in place to make sure that you were following your nutrition. Yeah. You were kind of monitoring your progress. Like, tell me a little more about what you did this year.
Yeah. So from like the very beginning.
January 1st, 2022.
Yeah. Open up your food logs and tell me
day.
what you had for breakfast. But no, I mean, like, okay, so we talked a little bit about daily routines and like people don't actually recognize like how much work goes into what you do. So I just am curious for you, like what, how much work goes, like what were you doing? Were you tracking your food every day? Like what were you doing?
When I first started moving, not necessarily tracking my food because I was at that point I was breastfeeding, so I just didn't want to be like on a really restricted diet where where my milk will go low. So the only thing that I was focusing on is more so get a protein goal. That's it. So I was logging a protein goal every single day, and the goal was to meet that goal, and then just pretty much eat whatever I want for the rest of it. And I mean, because when you're breastfeeding, you're supposed to make sure that you're eating and then, liquids and all that stuff. So the only thing that I focus on was just making sure that I was hitting a certain protein goal that day, which was, I think, 145 at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then from there, my workout routine, it would usually be somewhere like at 3 p.m. And then I would do a lot of core stuff, a lot of breathing stuff after having a baby. So I did like mostly just that for 3 months.
Yeah.
I touched no barbell, no weights. It was just breathing and core. That's it. And I would do it 5 times a week, and then I would just take off 2 days off. And then those 2 days off, I would do, walking and, take Weston for a walk, go for a nice hike, right? So just kind of out there.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I don't remember when was the competition that we did. Was it like in July, right? July. Yeah. And then I remember that one of you guys mentioned the comp. I think it was you who mentioned that comp. So then I was like, oh man, well, if I'm gonna, compete, then I guess I better train a little bit better, right? Especially when I haven't been touching the barbell or whatever. So I did get a little bit more, I wouldn't say strict, but I was more focused a little bit more on my nutrition. So just making sure that I was, hitting like 2,000 calories a day or whatever, just because I was, adding the barbell now and, adding a little bit more intensity in the workouts, right? So I just didn't want my milk to have low supply milk, and then also to make sure that I was doing okay in the workouts.
Right.
So then I was tracking macros at that point, and I was hitting about 2,000 calories a day at that point. And then I still kept doing my core and breathing exercises too as well, along with, just kind of picking up the pace a little bit with the workouts.
Do you just like set the program, once for 3 months and then just stick with it, or?
Weekly.
Oh, every week you're evaluating that.
Yeah, just because some weeks I remember like my, it wasn't quite ready for me to do like a certain movement. I'm like, all right, so I need to back off on that and then switch it with something. So it will be a weekly thing that I would do.
So you're like planning out your week. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
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 I never knew that.
Yeah. And then slowly but surely, I started adding weights, doing RX workouts, right? And then the comp started, we did the competition, and then afterwards we were like, I was so pumped, like I want to do another one, and then we did another one too. So it kind of just slowly, I got back into my, athlete that I was before.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like, I don't think people really recognize how much goes into that.
Yeah.
So, so it's like really helpful to hear that. Also, the fact that like, you go through it too.
Yeah. But again, like, I had no expectations for my recovery after having Weston to actually be this good.
Yeah.
You just never know, right? Everyone's very different. And I'm very thankful that mine's went pretty smooth. And it wasn't as fast as I would want it to be, right? But I do think I did recover very well. And one reason is because I talked to a lot of moms. So I talked to Rebecca. I remember I text Rebecca's like, when can I start working out again? She's like, well, you just had you had a child like 2 months ago. No.
The same text message from Heidi.
Yeah. So it's like, you think like you're ready, right? And this is when I ask, right? And I don't like tell myself like, yeah, you got this. Don't ask anyone. So it does help to, have coaches here that went through that already, right? Yeah. Just to confirm that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. But yeah, so very proud about that.
Amazing. Katie, what about you? What are some of the biggest lessons?
Oh man, I had to top these guys. I mean, I think for me, when I look back on the year, the very end of 2021 was when I first got a coach, and I had the goal of competing in the Wadapalooza qualifier in 2022.
Yep.
And so I was kind of looking for a coach to help guide me, because before that I was doing a lot of like program hopping. So I was like doing comp train. I was doing Greg Everett's like the Catalyst athletic lifting program. I'd tried that for a little while. I'd tried functional bodybuilding for a while. It was nice for like rehabbing an injury I had. And so finally decided just to make the investment in a coach. It was like more expensive than any of those things. But I was finding that I was just like wasting a lot of my time figuring out what to do.
Yep.
And so I found somebody who I trusted, who had been a CrossFit competitor, but also had burned out. And so now coached people with the perspective of like, if you want to compete in CrossFit for the long haul and not just like fuck up your body and fuck up your hormones and do it for a couple of years and then be burnt out. And she also had a similar history as me, as like related to food and eating. And so it was really cool when I found her as someone who like had learned a lot, and who I could learn from, and who also like shared some like would be sensitive, I noticed, some of the issues that I had around food. So that was a big milestone for me, because then it took a lot of the planning for me out of it. And so instead of like having to spend energy figuring out what I was going to do at the gym, it was like, great, somebody's giving me a plan that's perfect for me. I'm just going to execute. And I think over the course of the year, my biggest weakness as a CrossFit athlete is my strength. And I had always kind of been like the faster or the like gymnastics kind of athlete. And so for me, like the more we started working on strength, I think one of the biggest things I learned was like at least for me, like it felt so foreign to me to be like, oh, I'm just like gonna go to the gym and lift weights, like put my Rebecca hat on. But I found that like I almost had to like adopt. I almost had to act as if like pretend I was a strong athlete for a while, right? Like I had to put on this hat that was like, you're not just like, you're strong. And it was like, and it was weird, but it kind of worked. It was like when I put on that hat of like, yeah, you can do this. Like you can go in and lift or whatever. It's like I started to like live into that, and I saw like my lifts improve and things improve. And then we also did it in such a way that like I had a lot of hip pain from like all the squatting that I was doing on comp train, and like I had bicep tendonitis from all the tree work I had done. And so like taking the longer route of like doing some unilateral work, like doing some more core work, stuff that I wouldn't have done on my own, but like we did it together, and we actually lowered the volume, which to me was like a totally scary thing to do. But like all of that added up to like my body healed, and then I was actually able to lift more than when I started. And so it was just like kind of like to Wendy's point, is like trusting the process. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. You also found a better gym.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a whole separate thing.
We were waiting for that, Katie.
Now I've got all the new. But that is a big thing too, is that like I've never worked out around other people. I mean, not that I have never worked out around other people, but it's different to be around, like I get to look at Rebecca and I look at Wendy, like be like, ooh, I want to do that. Like I want to be more like that. And that is just like added motivation that you don't have when it's just you.
Yeah.
So that has been a huge like source of inspiration, and just like, yeah, nice to have.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Biggest learning, health and fitness for me is, I work better with a coach. I don't really have the time or the energy or the desire to figure everything out on my own anymore. I reserve that for other things. So having a coach works a lot better. And also there is like for me, there's always a point where it's like, you have to shift, your perspective on stuff, right? It's like, it's not always about competition. Sometimes it's just about like, how do I feel today, and making sure that I feel good and that I can show up again the next day. And then some days you get competitive and you want to go for it, and that's okay. But it's kind of like just changing that perspective. So yeah, that was it for me. I started doing a lot better when I got a coach. Also, still got a couple of PRs in me. So that was another big learning this year. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't you just PR your deadlift like a few days ago?
Yeah, but like, that was...
a quarter ton.
That was totally unexpected, right? And so when that happens, then I'm like, oh, what can I do with some of the other lifts? And then, you start to kind of go down that route again. So
like if we all stacked ourselves together, like You could lift that and then some.
You can lift a car.
Yeah.
Is that what
You
how much
could
does a car
definitely
weigh?
deadlift a Jeep.
No. All right. Well, anyways.
Maybe like a Mini Cooper,
Yeah, maybe.
right?
With a couple
Maybe.
clowns in it.
Yeah, well, that was, pushing you guys on the sled. That was
Oh, that was it. That was
the thing.
preparation. That's right.
So yeah, those are some of the biggest ones for me. Also, like, I think from a coaching perspective, just seeing how many different ways people can get to where they want to get to is really great, because then it just means, as we've been coaching people, there's really no one size fits all. It's more just like, how do we make this work for each individual? And it's been really cool to sort of see that, like, from like the really like high level athletes to people that are just getting started, and seeing like how they progress over time. That's been a big kind of eye-opening thing for me, right? And even just seeing how you all progress over time, right? Just, I mean, if you focus on something for a year, you can kind of crush it.
Yeah,
Like it's
for sure.
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, health and fitness is one thing. I'm really curious, what were your biggest learnings outside of health and fitness, right? So what were some of the biggest lessons or reminders that you had this year? Because really, we're doing this to improve the rest of our lives, right? So what were some of the biggest things that you took away from this year outside of the health and fitness realm?
I'll start.
Didn't we say Wendy's eyes were going to go like this?
I think, just being a first-time mom, I've learned that I need to give myself a little bit more credit with like the amount of work that I put in, and provide for my kid and just be with my kid. I'm a good mom, and there's been multiple times that I'm like, wow, I don't think I'm doing this right, this mom thing right. But all that matters is that my son is healthy, and he like has a big smile in his face, and every time he sees me when I get home, and I think that's all I really want. So just giving like myself a little bit more credit, and I'm a good mom.
Yeah.
Like just telling that to myself a little bit more, like stop feeling guilty. You're a good mom.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm going to have in mind coming into this new year. So that's one.
That's so
for
good.
me.
You are a good mom.
Yeah.
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 And that's, we were talking about that the other day. Like, so many moms just feel like they're not doing enough, or they're just like, they're ruining their kids somehow. And it's just like, I think you are great as a mom. I think
Thank you.
you are also great as a mom, Rebecca. Because it's just like, there's no manual.
No, there isn't. There is no manual. There is, you read about so many ways that you can do things, right? But honestly, that's just never the case. Like, just never. It's kind of its unique way, and you just have to go with it. But yeah, I mean, I have to keep telling that to myself. I'm a good mom. So that's mine.
Awesome. I love it. Rebecca, what about you?
What was the question again?
She's like, oh, Wendy's a good mom.
I learned that Wendy's a good mom this year.
What were some of the learnings or things, maybe a better one is just things that you were reminded of this year, just based on some of the things that have happened, some of the ups and downs that you've been through? I'll give you more time to think about it. We'll come back to you.
Well, I'm trying to think of how to be succinct without over-explaining. So you guys go.
Yeah, why don't you go, Katie?
Yeah, sure. I thankfully heard you say that this is what we were talking about, so I had a chance to jot down some of my thoughts. And I came up with for me, there's three big ones, but I think one being, I think this year I was reminded that I could trust my ability to figure things out. And the short story behind this is I remember one time I was climbing a tree, and it was a hickory tree, and it was a very tall hickory, so I was about 70 feet up in the air. And when you're climbing trees, you're the only one there. You're the only one in the tree. You have ground people who are helping you, but fundamentally, if there's a problem in the tree, you are alone in figuring it out. So you have to figure it out. And I remember getting up to the top and I realized that the spot that I was tied into was a cracked branch, which is a really dangerous thing. Like you don't want to be.
It sounds very dangerous.
Yeah, like you don't want to
questioning
plummet to your death. But I just remember being up there and it was like I had to change my tie-in points multiple times. Like dangerous things like that happen. You have to change your tie-in point. When you change your tie-in point, there's like a moment in time where you're not secured to the tree, which is not fun, which is why you try not to do it that often. But anyways, but long story short, like I just remember being up there and having to like completely calm my nervous system in order to do the thing that I had to do and like really be knowledgeable of my resources and like what are the things that I can do to like secure myself. Anyways, but it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm so glad I experienced it. And there are others that are like it, but it was like, wow. If I wasn't in this position, I wouldn't have had to have figured this thing out. I wouldn't have had to have figured out how to like handle nerves and like the sense of panic that comes up when you're in a position where it's like, this could go wrong. And it was like from situations like that and others like it that I like learned that I didn't have to know how to do all of the things in order to take action. Like all I had to do was trust my ability to figure the thing out once I did it. And so that has led to a lot of different decisions in my life. Like the decision, you know, not even a year after that incident, for example, to like start my own business and knowing that like, all right, I had to have enough things in place, do my homework, but also know that there was going to be a million things that I'd be figuring out as I went. And that led also to like a big change this year, which was coming out west, which was like, all right, I know there's some things I need to have in place, but I don't have to have it all figured out just to make that move, deciding what was important, making the move even without everything figured out. So I think that fundamentally, and maybe it goes even to like what you're saying, it was just like trusting the process, like trusting your ability to be resourceful. Yeah, I would say that was a big one for me this year.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. Near-death experience.
Yeah.
on a 70-foot hickory tree. I wouldn't even be able to point to a hickory
The trees here are like 3 times as large, so climbing trees out west is like, oh Lord, I don't even know how I'd handle that. 200 freaking feet up in the air.
Dang.
All right, Rebecca, what do you got? What was your biggest learning from this year?
Never climb a hickory tree. And Wendy's a great mom.
Rebecca keeps her learning to the last 3 days. we were out the other day, and I said, "What are you most proud of this year?" And she's like, "I got a great sleep last night."
Well, but I've been taking like some sort of sleeping aid every day forever. And I was like the first time in recent memory that I can think of not taking a sleeping aid. So it was kind of a big deal, I think.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so biggest learning from this past year, I think getting ahead of a situation before it gets out of control. And I mean, I don't want to be specific with anything, but there has been multiple times, I think, this year where I've allowed things to happen, whether it's in my personal life, professional life, and it's caused maybe more work, it's caused more problems in the future, caused more headaches. So now I can, if I see something arising, I will stop it. Head on. I don't know. That was a good way of
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's like we talk about this all the time. It's like sometimes a 10-minute uncomfortable conversation can save you like months of like worry and effort and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think about situations in the past where it's caused me lots of anxiety, and I'm just like, I get really worked up and irritated. And now I can take a moment and just be like, you know what? I'm just going to make a phone call. And I'm just going to, I mean, I did that last night. Something came up. And, you know, in the last like 6 months, I can think of a handful of times where I've just, you know, rather than brood about it and get worked up and have like, this is what they're thinking conversations, I just, you know, I'm just going to make a phone call and do what needs to be done. So, yeah.
That is amazing. I love that one. So, okay, for me, some of the biggest things are recognizing the value of the coach. Kind of mentioned that before, but like it's interesting. If you find the right coach, then just putting your trust in them until they violate that trust, if that ever comes up, right? But just like they know what they're talking about. That's why you're hiring them, right? And so, I've hired a coach to help with this content stuff, and that's really been working. And I hired a coach to help with my nutrition. And like, to be perfectly honest, he probably knows less about nutrition than we do, but he knows enough to be able to help me. And he's got an outside perspective that none of us will have, trying to coach me. Right. And so that is just super helpful. And it kind of, the second part of it, well, there's three things. So the second part is related to that, which is just like really like kind of trusting people more to do what's best and allowing mistakes to happen as long as the intention is there. Right. And so, I mean, I can be more specific. like all three of you have really taken what we've been, putting together over this last few years and just run with it, especially the last 12 months. And it's like, once we all got clear about what the hell we were doing, then you just kept making it better. Right. And like, the more that happens, the less I need to be involved, because I tend to get too involved if I'm involved at all. Right. So I think that's been a big one. And then the last one for me, this is probably the biggest one, is the more I narrow down what I'm doing to like one or two things, the more successful that I am. Right. So, I quit doing all the consulting earlier this year. And then like, as a result, we all kind of cleaned up a bunch of stuff and like improved, the business. And every time I focus on one thing, it works 10 times better than if I try to do 4 or 5 things. So, we have these like this bet that we're making about these 4 things. And it's like, really, I'm just focused on like 2 of them. Right. And if I can do those 2, then the other ones may or may not happen. But, those are the 2 that matter.
Which
right?
are those?
The lifts.
So you think you're gonna get the lift before?
There is no doubt I'm going to get the lifts before you.
All right.
And David. Absolutely not. You better get the bar muscle up and the other thing, because otherwise it's going to cost you a lot of money.
I was gonna say, I don't know, and I feel like, I don't know. Just get that $100 ready. It's coming.
Don't spend it, because I'm going to take it back. All right. So, yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about this before. I actually think reviewing the last year is more important than setting goals for the next year, because, getting like figuring out what worked and what didn't work, those are the kind of things that like will allow you to set yourself up for success in the future. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all the questions that I have for you guys today.
Nice.
Sometimes these things get a little too deep, so I'm not gonna ask you any more. So I'm really excited, and maybe we'll talk about this on the next one, of what your goals are gonna be for this next year, right? Once you've kind of completed all of that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's another good night's sleep. I don't know.
I just want one in 2023.
Yeah, 365 shots.
Yeah.
And this is something actually, like, for some of the folks that y'all working with, you're doing sort of reviews of, what went well in this last year and kind of thinking about what's going forward. So if you're listening to this and you haven't done that for yourself, then, definitely reach out to your coach and, and let's talk about it. Like, what went well? What do you want to do next? So,
For sure.
Anything else to add?
No,
that's everything.
Yes.
Excellent.
That's it.
All right. Well, I don't have any questions in the chat. I have a couple people on. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
do we have any questions?
Listeners?
I think they're asleep.
Oh, we bore them
see.
with our talks.
They have to say
Their highlights.
Yeah.
Boring highlights.
their goal is to never climb a hickory tree.
Yeah.
great
That seems
mom
way more
And
dangerous.
have hard conversations.
Yeah.
Seems way more dangerous than anything we do in the gym.
Yeah.
Wow. That is,
No.
that's intense.
Yeah.
Also super fun.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Google what a hickory tree looks like.
Yeah. Hickories have, nobody wants to hear this. Never mind.
No, I want to hear.
They have really dense wood. Like it was the heaviest by far of any of the trees that we used to cut, and used to like mess up our saws because the wood's so hard. Yeah, but it burns super slow. Actually, like hickory smoked stuff is like a thing
Yeah.
you've probably had.
Yeah.
'Cause, like burns really slow, smokes a lot. Yeah, and it's habitat for bats too. Like shagbark hickory had this cool bark that bats can home up in. So, you know.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen many hickory here. I don't know if
know
that's
if
a
they're-
common
yeah, I don't
tree
know
out
if they're here.
west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it rains quite enough
Yeah. Yeah.
out
Yeah.
here for that. So
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you know that there are around 18 species?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know.
all right.
18.
We're cutting this off.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, appreciate you joining. Appreciate you listening if you're listening. And if you have any other questions, make sure you post those and we will. Yeah. Oh, Kristen was going to ask about our goals for the next year, but I think that we're going to talk about that next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give us
And-
Stay tuned.
a few more days to think about our goals.
My goal is to get sleep like that I did that one night. That one night back in 22.
Have you? So we were talking about this today, actually, and I asked Katie, like, what are your goals for the next year? And Katie pulls out a spreadsheet, right? And it's like the spreadsheet's like 10 pages, and it's all of her goals for 2022. I was like, and you broke down every hour of a week and how you were going to spend the time for the goals. That it was so impressive.
Dang.
So impressive. So I want to give Katie the proper time to
Wow.
plan for 2023 before the
she-
next one.
Can she share on a screen that people can, the Zoom share?
Sure. Yeah. If people find that useful. Yeah.
We don't want to discourage people from setting goals.
I can't set a goal like Katie, so I am not going to set
Yeah,
any
forget
goals.
it. Goals are not for me.
Oh my.
My goals are here.
Yeah.
That's the only one I worry about. Right?
Just, you don't
I
want that.
feel like every year I always buy like some habit tracking journal with like the pens. I always go and buy the pens because you can't like in the nice tape and the stencils. Because I'm gonna like create this beautiful journal of goals.
And what happens to it?
Oh, within like a month, it's just sitting there until the next year where I'm like, I don't remember where I put all this stuff. So I'm like, I need a new journal with new pens and new.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just feel like such a sense of scarcity around time. I don't know why. I think I actually for a long time thought I would only live to 30, or like I would be lucky if I made it to 30. And so I felt like everything I get on top of that is icing on the cake. But I was telling Jay, like the gym I used to work at put this like,
Wait, what?
She says this so like casually too. Yes.
but they put up this this calendar one year, and it was the entire year, and there was like you could see a number for every single day, and it was like all there right there on that page. And it was like, I remember seeing that and realizing like a year actually isn't that much time. It sounds like a lot of time, like sitting here on close to whatever, December 29th. But like once that bar starts rolling, it's like you got 365 days. That's it in the entire year. So it's like, and to be able to like see it in that way, I don't know, for whatever reason, like it just clicked. Like if there's shit I want to get done, like it is only up to me to make sure it gets done. Like I'm the only person.
I see.
You know?
That's a really good way
I
to put it.
remember my dad saying something to me when I was little, like time used to go by so slow when you're a child. And then I don't even think he meant to be profound, but for some reason it resonates. He's like, oh yeah, when you're under 10, 1 year is less than like, it's like,
Yeah, it's like a 10th
10%
of your life.
But now as you get older, it's like, what I'm almost said I'm almost 50, but I'm not. How old am I?
You are not almost 50.
I mean, I'm
There's
close.
anything
You
wrong with
really need to
50.
work on the sleep thing. Because you forget how old you are. Your goals end after 3 weeks. Where'd that journal go? I need some
At
goals.
some point in life, you just round up.
You round up.
So did I show you the poster I have that shows you your life in weeks?
Oh,
Have I shown you that?
No, but that's
All right,
great.
I'll take a picture. I'll send it to you. But it's like, here's how many weeks you've lived, and here's how many you have to go. And you tell the people that print the poster, like, I think I'm going to live to 85 or something, right? And they tells you how many weeks to go, and you're just like, I better not waste these weeks. Yeah. So
Just got this pit of despair thinking about that.
welcome to my world.
I don't want that poster.
Well, yeah. Is that why you don't sleep? Do you avoid, because it's like death? Is that
Yeah,
it?
I guess.
So there's a very specific reason. I want to remind myself that I am going to die and I don't have all the time in the world, right? So that's what that poster is for. So it might be morbid, but it's actually helpful for me.
It makes me just want to binge watch like a British crime drama and never get off the couch.
That's what the thought of death does for you? Okay. I'd be really interested to hear your goals next week. Okay, so to give us the proper time to really think through this and Rebecca to get her stencils and stuff, we're going to talk about goals for next time. And I think what might be useful is for people to hear the process that we would go through to think about like how we might set our goals or how we might put that stuff in place. Because a lot of this stuff is stuff that we go through with the folks that we coach as well, right? So really curious to hear what y'all come up with, especially Rebecca. This is her favorite thing to do. Yeah, exactly.
Wish to not live in dread.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you in the next one.
Red.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, we've got plenty of others. Go check out this one over here.